It all started in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where people mowed their lawns on Saturday mornings, waved politely at each other from across the street, and pretended like nothing in the world could ever disturb their carefully maintained peace. Every house looked almost the same, with manicured hedges, trimmed grass, and mailboxes painted in colors that seemed to compete with each other. On the outside, it seemed like the perfect neighborhood, safe, clean, and calm. But anyone who has ever lived under the rule of a homeowners association knows the truth. There's always one person who ruins it for everybody else. In my neighborhood, that person was Karen. Karen lived 3 houses down from me, though it felt like she was always in my yard, always watching, always searching for a reason to complain. She wasn't just a neighbor. She was a self-appointed sheriff of the HOA, even though she wasn't actually on the board. Somehow she had inserted herself into every little decision, from what kind of curtains were acceptable to how high your grass could grow before you got a notice on your door. Nobody liked her, but most people just tolerated her, because fighting with her only made life harder. Unfortunately for me, Karen's biggest problem wasn't my lawn or my trash cans. It was my dog, Max. Max was a golden retriever, sweet, loyal, and friendly to everyone he met. He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't destructive, and honestly, he wasn't even that loud. Sure, he barked sometimes. He was a dog, but it was nothing unusual. A delivery truck, a squirrel in the yard, a neighbor walking their own dog, Max would give a few barks, wag his tail, and then move on. But to Karen, every single bark was a personal attack on her peace of mind. The complaints started small. A little note taped to my door, written in that passive-aggressive handwriting that only a true Karen can master. Then came the emails to the HOA, always framed as if Max's bark was equivalent to a full-blown construction site, operating 24 hours a day. She claimed she couldn't sleep, that she couldn't concentrate, that her health was being impacted by the constant noise. At first, I brushed it off. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Karen had a reputation for exaggerating. She once tried to get a family fined because their Halloween decorations attracted demonic energy. But as the weeks went on, her obsession with Max grew worse. She started recording videos of him barking, little clips, where she'd stand on the sidewalk with her phone out, waiting for him to make a sound. Then she'd send those clips to the HOA with timestamps and detailed notes, as if she were presenting evidence in a court of law. I tried to be reasonable. I made sure Max wasn't left outside for long periods. I even bought one of those citronella bark collars, though I hated using it. But nothing seemed to satisfy Karen. She wasn't looking for compromise. She was looking for control. The tipping point came one afternoon when I was bringing groceries inside. Max barked twice, literally, 2 short barks, because the delivery guy across the street dropped a package. Before I could even get the milk into the fridge, Karen was at the edge of my driveway, arms crossed, glaring like she was about to hand me a ticket. That's when I realized something important. Karen wasn't actually bothered by the barking. She was bothered by the fact that Max was mine. She needed something to control, and she had chosen my dog as her target. I decided then and there that if Karen wanted a war, she was going to get one, but not in the way she expected. I started researching harmless dog training tricks, things that wouldn't break any HOA rules, things that wouldn't technically count as noise violations, but would drive someone like Karen absolutely insane. I wasn't going to punish Max or make him miserable. Instead, I was going to use his natural energy in the most creative way possible. The first idea came from an obedience training video I stumbled upon. It showed how you could teach a dog to speak on command. Most people used it as a party trick. You'd say speak, and the dog would bark once, then sit proudly, tail wagging. Max was a fast learner, and within a week he was barking on cue like a pro. But I didn't stop there. I added variations. 1 bark for a clap of my hands, 2 barks when I snapped my fingers, a playful howl whenever I whistled a certain tune. Max thought it was the best game ever, and every time he got it right, I rewarded him with treats and belly rubs. To him it was fun. To me it was the perfect weapon. The next step was timing. I knew Karen's routines because she made sure everyone did. She left for her morning walk at exactly 7:15. She watered her front lawn at 6:30 every evening. And every night, like clockwork, she sat on her porch scrolling through her phone, pretending to monitor the neighborhood. All I had to do was make sure Max's new tricks lined up with her schedule. The first test run was glorious. At precisely 7:15, when Karen strutted past my house in her neon tracksuit, I gave Max the hand signal. 1 sharp bark. She froze in place, whipping her head around like she'd just been insulted. I gave the signal again. 2 barks. Her eyes narrowed. Then I whistled, and Max let out a playful howl that echoed down the street. Karen stormed off, muttering under her breath, but I could see the frustration boiling just beneath the surface. Over the next few days, I fine-tuned the routine. Every time Karen tried to catch Max in the act, his barking would conveniently stop. She'd stand there with her phone, recording him, but unless I gave the signal, Max stayed quiet. No excessive barking, no rule violations, just perfectly timed, perfectly controlled bursts of sound. It drove her mad. Karen escalated, of course. She always did. She filed more complaints with the HOA, claiming that my dog was trained to harass her specifically. But without evidence, her accusations went nowhere. Other neighbors started to notice her obsession and quietly sided with me. A few even admitted they thought it was funny. That only made her angrier. So she changed tactics. Instead of going through the HOA, she started trying to confront me directly. She'd linger on the sidewalk, waiting for Max to bark. She'd shout from across the street that I was a bad neighbor and that she was keeping track of every incident. Once, she even threatened to call animal control. Though I knew they wouldn't do anything since Max wasn't breaking any laws, I refused to engage. I didn't yell back, I didn't argue, and I didn't rise to her bait. I just smiled, waved, and let Max perform his perfectly timed little symphony. It became a sort of neighborhood spectacle. People would gather their trash cans or check their mail right around the time they knew Karen would be outside, just to see the show. Max became a local hero, the dog who stood up to the tyrant without ever actually misbehaving. And then came the grand finale. One evening, the HOA scheduled a community meeting at the local clubhouse. Karen showed up with a folder full of evidence, dozens of grainy video clips of Max barking, each one time-stamped, each one accompanied by a furious paragraph about how her life was being ruined. She marched up to the front, practically shaking with rage, and demanded that the board fine me or even force me to get rid of Max. But as she played the clips on the projector, something became hilariously obvious. Every single bark was isolated, short, and oddly rhythmic. One bark, two barks, a little howl, then silence. Instead of proving her case, the videos made Max look like the most well-trained dog in the world. The board members exchanged confused glances, and one of them even asked if I had entered Max into obedience competitions. The neighbors chuckled. Karen's face turned bright red. She tried to argue, tried to spin the narrative, but the damage was done. Her obsession had made her look ridiculous, and everyone knew it. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. I explained that Max was a loving, well-trained dog who barked only when commanded. He wasn't disruptive, he wasn't dangerous, and he certainly wasn't violating any HOA rules. I reminded everyone that dogs bark, it's what they do, and that I had gone above and beyond to make sure. Max was respectful of the neighborhood. By the end of the meeting, the board dismissed Karen's complaints entirely. In fact, they warned her about filing frivolous reports, hinting that if she kept wasting their time, she might be the one facing fines. Karen stormed out, slamming the door behind her. After that night, she tried to keep up the fight, but her power had been stripped away. The neighbors no longer took her seriously. The HOA no longer listened to her rants. And every time she walked past my house, Max would sit proudly on the porch, tail wagging, waiting for my signal. Sometimes I'd clap once and he'd bark. Sometimes I'd whistle and he'd howl. And every single time Karen would grit her teeth and hurry away, knowing she had lost. Max didn't just defend himself from Karen's nonsense. He turned the tables. He became the symbol of standing up to her tyranny. A furry little reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't anger or confrontation. It's creativity. And in the end, Karen taught me something without even realizing it. She taught me that when someone is determined to make your life miserable, the best way to win isn't by playing their game. It's by rewriting the rules entirely. Because while she was busy counting barks and filing complaints, I was busy teaching Max a trick she could never unhear. And that's how my dog, with nothing more than a wagging tail and a perfectly timed bark, managed to out-Karen the ultimate Karen.